Well, good afternoon, and thank you for staying with us. So we've got a special treat for everyone. For those of you not finished, please continue your meal. And please note that during the presentation, we'll not be accepting questions from the audience. And please make sure that you've got your phones silenced, okay? So today, we're really privileged and honored to have the new DoD Chief Information Officer, Dana Deasy, and Brigadier General Kevin Kelly join us to provide some closing remarks and comments and have a little bit of discussion amongst themselves. I think it's a great way to get the new Chief Information Officer out here and exposed to some of you through this opportunity for us. And again, we're certainly appreciative that they've chosen this event to do so. Mr. Deasy was most recently the CIO at JP Morgan Chase, where he led a major technology overhaul, which included adopting agile development and methods. As the DoD CIO, he will be the primary advisor to the Secretary of Defense on information management, information technology, information assurance, cyber, as well as several non-intelligence space and critical satellite items, communications, position navigation and timing, and spectrum, the RF spectrum, and telecommunications. All those things that are coming to the fore now as we work and we evolve into this contested space that we're operating in. But I think when you look at his record and his background, you can see he's the right man for the job at the time. He's very familiar with safeguarding information coming from the banking and finance industry. He understands risk and risk management and how to deal with that. He understands the market forces and the importance of speed to market for capabilities. And he understands the value of information and its supporting role to decision-making and command and control. And as I said, as coming from JP Morgan Chase, he certainly understands the competitiveness and the need to be first in the world that we're living in today. General Kennedy is a command pilot of more than 34,000 hours in a B-1 and a T-38, including combat over Afghanistan. As Principal Director for the Deputy CIO for Command Control Communications and Computers and Information Infrastructure capabilities, he provides technical expertise and broad guidance on policy, programmatic, and technical issues related to C4IC to integrate and synchronize defense-wide along with communications and infrastructure. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Deasy and General Kennedy to the stage.
Thank you. Thanks, sir.
All right, boss. So this is an interesting one. Mr. Deasy's been in the job 8 days, and as you can all see, I'm not Ms. Miller. So what we had to do is, I wasn't part of this, but I think there was a rock, paper, scissors, sir. So she's on the Hill in a closed-door session testifying, and Mr. Deasy's here talking about the Department of Defense after 8 days in the job. Sorry, I think you came out ahead. But what we'd like to do, first of all, General Shea, thank you for that kind intro to us. Vice Admiral Norton, ma'am, thank you for having us. And AFCEA, thank you, writ large, all the members in industry, thanks for having us. We were discussing this on the way up, and we mentioned that we do a lot of AFCEA events, and I think they're all valuable. And so that's one thing you're going to find in this community. I joined this community about 3 years ago, and I find it very valuable to get the industry partnership and as we work with industry on the good ideas that are out there and help us in our mission. So with that, 8 to 9 days.
Yep.
As our CIO of one of the largest, if not the largest organization on the planet, what do you think so far, sir?
So let's have a little further conversation about this rock, paper, scissors. I don't know about you, but I was told you can either go have lunch, talk to several hundred people about kind of where you think things are going, or you can go to a closed-door session, probably not have the overly whelming fun experience, And I said to Miss Miller, I said, "You've done rock, paper, scissors before. I think I clearly won. What about you all?" I am though disappointed that Miss Miller couldn't join, because I think it's important that when anybody joins a new role, one of the things you always ask yourself is, how smooth is the handoff going to go? And I have to tell you, it's been remarkably smooth when you just consider the absolute enormity of this. And I couldn't have done it without Miss Miller, and I think she's done just an absolutely outstanding job of leading this organization over the last number of months, and I just want to give her a call out today. So.
All right, boss, that's the softballs. Here we go.
Okay.
So how would you compare? So
And if you do a good job, I'll give you a call out today.
Oh, okay, all right.
All right.
All right, you set the bar. Here we go. So General Shea mentioned that you most recently with Chase, you've also with BP, Siemens, Tyco. How would you compare and contrast your role as you see it as a government CIO versus an industry CIO?
So what's similar is people who work in technology obviously just love technology. And I find it doesn't matter where I've gone, if you find great technologists, they want to do great things. Bureaucracy exists everywhere. It exists obviously on the private sector side, it exists in government. I will tell you that maybe one of the biggest differences I've noticed is when you are in the private sector, you do have matrix management. You have different people that you're managing to and having to interface with. It's become very clear to me that the board of directors is a little bit bigger here, 500 plus, and I'm still just trying to wrap my heads around that concept. The other thing I would say is when you work in the private sector and you go ask 10 different people, why are we here? What is the purpose of what we're here to do? You might actually get 10 different answers. And I have to tell you, when I ask that question here, it is very, very clear. Everybody talks about the mission and how it aligns to the National Defense Strategy. And I think that's terrific, because one of the things you always want to do as a leader is you want to be able to come in and you want to be able to get people focused. And I realized that's not the issue here. Yes, there maybe needs some reorganization, there may need some restructuring, but why people are here, I have to say that's been the thing that's delighted me most. Everybody is crystal clear on the focus of the mission. Excellent.
And so, sir, one of the aspects that we've been talking about with the mission and its the impact is, and in the news a lot, is cloud. Mm-hmm. So a lot of folks in the room are probably interested in your thoughts. And I know based on where we are, there's only so far you can go. But as someone that's had to do this before, and the churn that we're experiencing in the department, in your experience, how do you see this going? What are some of the things, the lessons learned that we need to think about?
Yeah, so let's start with what is the kind of the biggest single thing that, at least for me personally, that I've seen in cloud is one of the most iterative things I've ever been involved with. 36 plus years, obviously been involved with a lot of technologies. First thing, there's not a singular thing that cloud is. There's a lot of different things to what makes up a cloud. And so one of the things I find you have to do early on is you got to get clear what conversation you're in and what are you talking about. I mean, we all know as professionals, cloud can do different things for you. It can be an infrastructure, it can be a platform, it can be as a software as a service. And each of those has its own permutation, its own challenges. And so what I've done in my career as I've gotten introduced to cloud, most recently in my last job, was it's really important that everybody gets very clear as to what the conversation you're having, what it is you're trying to do, and to understand this is not a case of you're trying to lift out of your old world and you're suddenly trying to drop into a new world. But this is the most phenomenal opportunity I think we've ever experienced as technical folks, to be able to look at your legacy estate and say this is a brilliant opportunity to re-engineer. And I think early on, getting people focused around the fact That cloud allows you to do amazing things you simply haven't been able to do historically. The idea of just self-healing, awareness, the attributions of being able to get more services on the fly gives us as IT professionals a whole new way to operate our estate and to build the future of how we want IT to run.
All right, sir, and before I gave the boss 2 chits to play, 8-day cards. So I'll see if he plays one here. So, sir, 8 days. What's your priorities? How do you see your vision for CIO? And Doug's taking notes.
I probably could count the hours it's actually been, let alone days. None of this is going to surprise you. The very first thing I did when I got here, as I said, is there a singular thing that we were all focused on? Everybody kept saying, really get to know the National Defense Strategy. And so I sat down, I read it. I had a chance as I was onboarding to meet with the Secretary and the Deputy Secretary. And it became very, very crystal clear to me that truly understanding what's set inside that strategy was going to help to crystallize what it is we need to focus on. I mean, everybody, I assume in this room knows, the 3 tenets of that is lethality, alliances, and reform. And you can quickly, just looking at those 3 tenets, start to shape a strategy that says it's going to be multidimensional. There will be some technologies that we'll be doing that will actually support both the reform side as well as the lethality side. And in most everything we're talking about doing, you're going to find yourself in a conversation of how does this work in terms of alliances? And alliances can mean different things, whether it be our mission partners, whether it be academia, or whether it be private industry. So every conversation I've had up until now, every conversation with the new team has been, tell me your part, the role you're playing in support of those 3 tenets. And it's really allowed me, at least early on, to get very grounded very quickly. And just this week, it allowed me to have my first conversation with the Secretary and the Deputy Secretary around my early thoughts around what are those things we need to do to support that strategy.
Boss, I've heard you talk a little bit about some of the things that you think underpin our contribution in CIO, and the conference here is focused on innovation. I was wondering if you want to share your thoughts on that.
Yeah, there are things that have to be done in innovation that I would call is, people always think when you use the term innovation, we're always talking about something that is brand new, leading edge, maybe never been done, or we want to be early adopters are. And yes, we have that. I mean, we're going to be looking at big data and machine learning and artificial intelligence and cloud and all the things that you would expect to hear me say today. But I also always remind people, innovation is sometimes taking what you have and how do you make it better? And I think that sometimes we don't spend enough time on looking at the fact that we have an estate, I would argue a very large estate, and we always shouldn't be thinking that the only way you get improvement is you have to move to something brand new, but you also sometimes just need to step back and say, how do we improve based on what we have? So I think I'd summarize by simply saying is the tenets of innovation are obviously going to be those things you would expect to hear me say. Obviously world class at cyber. We have to think about how do we better integrate data, and you're going to do that through a variety of methods and tools and techniques, from how you think about big data, machine learning, artificial intelligence. There's going to be a cloud that kind of sits at the foundation of allowing you to build up many of these things, and it's going to have to run on a world-class environment.
All right, sir. And so everyone in this room deeply involved in that innovation. They wouldn't have been here, and a large portion is industry. I know when I come to these events, a lot of folks report, how can we help? Yeah. Industry wants to put their resources behind things that not only provide value to their company, but provide value to our national defense. So if I were to come up to you and say, how can I help? And I'm a member of industry, how can industry help?
Yeah, first of all, just a big shout out to AFCEA and DISA today to just inviting me. I actually got this invite before I started, And I have to admit, I got this acronym email sent to me, and I said, what the heck is that event? And then when they described what it was, I said, I really would like to participate if the calendar allowed. And the reason why is, if there's one thing I've learned in my going on 37 years of being involved in technology, is you cannot go after this stuff alone. There is an entire partnership and people that have to contribute to the success. And I've always said, you know, I need to be the face of that. I need to make sure people understand what that is. And I would tell you today that kind of how I think about this is, it doesn't do any of us any good for you all to just flood my inbox. First of all, it's screened by the colonel here. So that's probably not going to be a winning hand. Two is, you know, you all have access to the National Defense Strategy. You're all going to continue to get access as we continue to move down what it is that's important, and it's going to be based on these big tenets. And when people want to come and talk about something that's disconnected from the National Defense Strategy, or is going to be disconnected around the big tenets of what we're trying to get done, you know, the ability to have a lot of interest in that conversation is going to be limited. The ability for all of you to think in terms of, if you were sitting in my shoes, everything's got to connect together. These aren't singular, standalone conversations. You know, when I look at new innovations, or I look at things that you can bolt on to existing, the first thing you're sitting there and saying is, you know, what's the time, what's the cost, what's the effort, what's the security risk of adopting? And to the extent that you can always have conversations knowing those are the fundamental questions that are sitting in the minds of us, the better, more robust conversation we're going to have right out of the gate. The other thing I'd say is there is an amazing team around me, and I just always encourage people, at the end of the day, these are the individuals that get the work done. These are the people that have the real thought leadership, and I just always encourage people, continue to always work across the leadership team, because those are the people that can help accelerate what you have and help translate it and bring it that allows us to adopt it and embrace it. So those would be my big messages.
Excellent. All right, thanks. All right, sir, something we'll change course here just a little bit. As we're coming close on the time. So you mentioned on the never been stationed, never lived in DC, never served in government, just recently retired, had a plan for a little less high-paced lifestyle. So why return, and what does Mrs. Deasy think of this?
So I'm going to break this apart a little bit. So let's start right to what Mrs. Deasy thinks, because that is the single most important thing here. When I got the call from the White House, you know, 7 months retired, join life. I'm out hiking every day in our North Carolina home. Life is good. And we're getting ready to go for a hike, and the call comes, and she's looking at me like, why are you on the phone? We're supposed to be hiking. And I kind of mouth, the White House is calling. And, you know, she gives me the look like, okay, really? So the bottom line was, get off the phone after I've had the conversation with the deputy. And I said, do you think I should go to Washington and have these conversations? And she says, we should turn it around. You're not having the right way you're thinking about this, Dana. She says, how can you not? And there's two stories I'll tell. I started my career at Rockwell International, and for the first 13 and a half years, I helped build and launch space shuttles, which I thought was the coolest job on the planet. And the thing I remember most about that, because I had a chance to work with NASA, was that it was the idea of the mission, the purpose. And you could go around to anybody and you could talk about, why do we exist? You know, it was to launch, it was to manage the mission, deploy the space load, and return the astronauts safely back. And I always remember how much I enjoyed being a part of something where there was a mission. The last few years, I had a chance to get introduced and spend some time with folks in the Pentagon, People, they visited us at JP Morgan, or we were asked to come to Washington. And I remember every time I left one of those meetings, I always felt so inspired about what people were doing. And I always remember saying to myself, I even said it to my wife one time, I said, wouldn't that be the ultimate give back if some way, somehow, someday that could happen? And she reminded the day the call came in, she says, here's your chance. So she was all in.
Outstanding. All right, sir. Well, Ms. Miller may seem very open and collaborative to you, but she gave me strict orders to get you back at a certain time. So we're going to have to close this out with the last question, because she didn't lose the rock, paper, scissors on all our engagements today. So I'm at my retirement ceremony about 3 or 4 years or so, and based on your vision for the CIO, Secretary Mattis's guidance to us through NDS, what's it going to look like? Where will we be?
Sure.
What's right?
Well, first of all, the fact that you said that I will be at a retirement ceremony says that I obviously at least survived the period to get to a retirement ceremony. So I'll take that as a positive. As leaders, I firmly believe the number one responsibility is to leave your organization in a better place. And I truly, truly believe that that's the case. The thing I do every day since the moment I started thinking about this before I even arrived is to say, there's a lot to be done. A lot of this is going to carry on to future CIOs. And I would say what I would like people to talk about is that we've created change that's enduring, it's sustainable, and it can carry through in future missions. I'd love to think that the first conversation I have someday, when that day of retirement finally does come, again, that I'll get a call. And the call will be from the next individual that's leading this amazing organization and says, thank you. You've set us up to continue doing great things with the right structure, the right processes, the right technologies and foundation. That, to me, is what success would look like.
Excellent. Well, sir, thank you for your time. And I speak on behalf of everyone here. Thanks for joining us this afternoon for lunch and a quick discussion.
Thank you, everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Lieutenant General Bob Shea.
Well, let me just say, for someone who's only had 8 days on the job here, I think the words that came out of Mr. Deasy's mouth are going to resonate with everyone in this room, and certainly everyone in our association as well as the government. You heard the word integrated. You heard working with artificial intelligence, machine learning, the cloud, et cetera, and the ability and the necessity to work across the leadership, and that is terribly important. And finally, I think the one that really resonated with me certainly was, it's about the mission. And I'll tell you, there is no more noble mission than what our men and women in the Department of Defense and the people who support them, you out here in this audience, do today. So I want to thank you both for being here and sharing your comments with us. In lieu of a speaker gift, we were going to make a donation to the Fisher House on your behalf. So again, thank you very much for your support and your attendance again.
Thank you.
Okay, and so we've come to the closing of the Defense Cyber Operations Symposium. We'd like to thank all of our mission partners in advance and for the Council as we developed a program for this event. In particular, we'd like to thank the Department of Defense Cyber Command, the Defense Information Systems Agency, the Joint Force Headquarters, DoD. We also want to thank our sponsors and industry partners for the support of the symposium and for working with AFCEA to provide the best support possible for the Department of Defense and the government. In addition, we thank CompTIA, GIAC, and the certifying organization who reviewed our sessions for support of cybersecurity continuing education requirements. We'd also like to thank our preferred providers for their superb instruction. AFCEA is proud to put this event on, and I hope it's clear how dedicated we are to accomplishing our mission to support the national security, as well as your role in doing that. So please consider becoming a member If you aren't one already, it doesn't cost a lot of money, and it allows us to keep putting on great events like this. It allows you to have that ethical exchange. It allows you to do that networking, and it provides a way forward for all of you. We really are in a critical time in this nation's history and in the history of the free world. So we will embrace you, come aboard, and we look forward to having you join us. So please go to www.afcea.org to sign up. We've got many upcoming events, including several that continue the discussion on important topics of cyber that may be of interest to you. So if you visit the afcea.org/events for the full list. We've got several events, including a classified event coming up early in early in June, right out here in the Chantilly area. To help us make those upcoming events and next year's Defensive Cyber Operations Symposium better, and we want to continue to improve, please take a moment to go to the app and use the Rate This Session feature for all the sessions you attend this week. We really pay attention to this, and your feedback only helps us to make this stronger, and it helps us promote what you all are trying to do, regardless of where you come from, industry, government, or academia. The symposium will now conclude with Meet the Senior session and the registration lobby. This is a great opportunity. It's something, this is where DISA really does open up the doors and provides an opportunity for industry and government to come together and exchange ideas. This will be your last chance to engage with DISA leadership in this informal setting. So again, thank you for attending. Travel safely. There's weather out there, I guess, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Please mark your calendar for next year's Defensive Cyber Operations Symposium right back here in Baltimore, May 14th and May 16th next year. And again, to our partners from DISA and DoD, thank you for what you do on a daily basis. Thank you all, and have a safe travel.